Nepal often seems to me like a land that exists outside of time. Its ancient structures framing its modern moments. And its people, they always seem to be waiting. The capital, Kathmandu, was built up around monuments that stood imposing over the city for centuries. Until just last year, when the earth quaked and brought them down. I was here then, when the entire world rallied to Nepal's rescue and pledged to help its people rebuild. So that Nepal would never again be caught so tragically unprepared for disaster.
Even the donor failed us, government failed us. Despite that, we are surviving.
अझै नै अलिक नराम्रै जस्तो लाग्छ किनभने अब नेपालको अब वातावरणहरुदेखि लिएर सबै अलिक नराम्रो अलिक नोक्सानहरु
हाम्रो नेपालमा चाहिँ अर्थक्वेक प्रोन कन्ट्री हो भन्दै पनि सरकारी निकाय हामी कमन पिपल कसैले पनि यो भन्दा अगाडि चाहिँ नि केही सिरियसनेसै अपनाए.
1 year later, Nepal seems more vulnerable than ever.
अझै पनि छैन तपाईको अझै पनि किन केही ढुङ्गाको पर्खाल लाएर घर बनाएर अझै पनि त्यही फेरि तल हालेर तल मात्रै होइन भुइँ तल मात्रै होइन.
What if the earthquake of the same magnitude it hits Kathmandu tomorrow? Are you better prepared? It's not.
You're not better prepared.
No.
Last year, Dateline reporter Maggie Palmer and I spent the days immediately after the quake meeting survivors like Krishna.
Krishna,
yes,
good to meet you. Good to meet you.
And today, when I meet Krishna on the same street, much of the rubble still remains.
And many homes fell down here, and around 40 to 50 people died in this place alone.
Last year, Krishna's building had 6 floors. Weeks after the quake, the top 3 floors started to crumble, and his family had to evacuate.
People have learned a lot, as they have experienced the nightmare by this April 25 earthquake, and now people have started to sense that, it's not earthquakes which kill people, it's the structures, it's the poorly built structures which kill people. Here we had also one home, and that home too got collapsed.
It's eerie watching the construction crews digging new foundations beside Krishna's home. I'll never forget having to stand around in the days after the quake watching these same backhoes digging to find survivors and eventually exhuming the bodies of the deceased.
अब त्यो दिनमा तपाईको अब कुनै त अब 3 घण्टा पछि पनि झिक्यो बच्चा 3 घण्टा पछि नै झिक्यो. अब एउटै घरमा 5 जना मान्छे मर्यो. एउटै घरमा 5 जना मान्छे मर्यो. रातको 12 बजे निकाल्दाखेरि 5 जनाको लास भेट्यो. लास भेटेपछि बाहिर निकालेपछि अब त्यतिखेरको त अब सोच्नै नसक्ने कुरा. अब यताबाट नि मान्छे बोकेर ल्याउँछ, उताबाट नि मान्छे बोकेर ल्याउँछ. फलानु ठाउँमा यति मर्यो, ढिस्कान ठाउँमा यति मर्यो भन्ने मात्रै सुनिरहेछ है.
Krishna Dharel is the head nurse at a small clinic in the mountains north of Kathmandu. Today, a 16-year-old girl has gone into labor, and Shanta is speeding with her up the tortuous mountain road to the makeshift maternal ward. With no other clinic for miles in any direction, Shanta is a lifeline to these young, expectant mothers. After the quake destroyed her clinic, Shanta managed to raise enough for this prefabricated room Until recently, she was delivering babies in the tent outside. But no matter how hard this all looks to an outsider like me, this clinic is a hopeful place.
खुसी त अब बच्चा हुनलाई मन लाग्छ नि अरु त के छ र खुसी लाग्नको लागि केही पनि छैन नि घर छैन केही पनि छैन भुइँचालो आउँछ भने त्यो त डरै छ लाग्छ त घर पनि राम्रो छैन त्यतिकै बसेछ त्यसै बसेछ कटेर सानो जस्तो बनाएर
Such a neat sound.
यो नानी भएर नि लक्की भएको जस्तो लाग्यो हैन हामीलाई चाहिँ अब चाहिँ केही इफेक्ट त परेन नि भुइँचालोको कारणले गर्दाखेरि अब धन सम्पत्ति भनेको अलिअलि त गइहाल्छ तर मान्छेहरु चाहिँ सबैजना सकुशल भयो हैन त्यही भएर नि नानी आयो त्यही भएर नि लक्की छु जस्तो लाग्यो.
Emergency caregivers like Krishna Dharel have had an overwhelming year, to say the least. Immediately after the quake, global donors and agencies did help rescue thousands of Nepalis, and they pledged almost $4 billion in international relief and reconstruction aid. But the rescue effort ended within weeks. And then all the help seemed to just disappear.
अब करिब चाहिँ नि जम्मा गरेको कमिटमेन्ट मध्ये जम्मा 25% मात्रै अहिलेसम्म एग्रिमेन्ट भयो भन्ने छ. त्यसकारण चाहिँ नि त्यो भूकम्पको टाइममा यति धेरै मनीहरू आयो सहयोगहरू आयो भनेर प्रचारबाजी यो मिडिया इन्टरनेसनल गरे पनि नेपालमा चाहिँ वास्तविकमा चाहिँ थोरै एकदमै थोरै मनी आएको र जनताको लेभलमा चाहिँ अहिलेसम्म त्यस्तो अनुभूति हुने गरी त्यो सहयोग र डोनरै नपुगेको अवस्था देखिन्छ.
People were left alone to tend to the wounded in their own villages and neighborhoods. People like Krishna Dharel and monk Dorje Sherpa, a teacher in one of Kathmandu's famous monasteries.
मैले चाहिँ अब यस्तो भूकम्प अलि सानातिना भूकम्पहरु आउँदा चाहिँ निकै धेरै आतिनु हुँदैन अब आतिदा त्यो डरले नै अब मान्छे मर्ने अवस्था नै हुन्छ नि त्यो भएर मैले चाहिँ अब धेरै आतिनु हुँदैन फेरि म आफैले त्यो डर त हुन्छ नि.
When the government and big foreign donors appeared to be fading away, the monasteries continued to collect tithes and use that money to deliver whatever aid they could. Like was so often the case in the last year, most of the help that made it to the survivors came from inside their own communities.
जहीँ तहीँ पनि अब एकदम पानी यस्तो अब खानेकुराहरू जहीँ तहीँ पनि अब निकै गाह्रो भइरहेको थियो. अब एउटा गुम्बा चाहिँ एउटा समाजको नाताले अब सानो सहयोगहरू गरेर अब पाल टाङ्नेहरूदेखि लिएर अनि यस्तै अब खानेपानाहरू अलिअलि सहयोग पाइरहेको.
While the monks were able to tend to some of the most immediate physical needs in their communities, like food, water, building tents for shelter, Dorje Sherpa says that stitching the psychic wounds torn open by the quake, burying the fear that it unearthed, he says that has been the hardest part for most of Nepal.
जो अब भविष्यको लागि चाहिँ अब हानिकरणहरू भइरहेछ त्यसैले अलि अझै पनि भूकम्प आउँछ भने अलि डर मनमा आइरहेको त्यस्तै भाव.
It's a very common fear.
We were like fearful that there would be another impending disaster, another earthquake which might struck us, which might kill us.
The fear that you hear on the streets is not just of another quake, but that the government is incapable of rescue when that happens. Nepal's political parties say they've just taken a historic step towards rebuilding a new and more capable government. But Nepalis have heard these sorts of promises before.
The drive to rebuild Nepal began long before the quake. For almost 50 years, the country had been torn apart by autocrats, monarchists, and civil war. It wasn't until after the quake that Nepal's fractured political parties came together to sign Nepal's new constitution. And so Nepal isn't just rebuilding its capital cities and its villages, it's rebuilding its entire state system from the ground up. And that has meant a 2015 filled with painful and dangerous delays, while the leaders responsible for rebuilding learn on the job.
Many of Nepal's leaders are former rebels with no democratic governing experience. And after the constitution was passed, this chaotic new government then refused to accept global aid unless they could entirely control how it was spent. No one was allowed to begin rebuilding until the National Reconstruction Authority said so. It only authorized rebuilding to begin a few months ago. Meanwhile, many donors had packed up their pledges and left, leaving Nepal in much the same state as when they came to the rescue a year ago.
I mean, donors were coming forward, making pledges, so we had to capitalize on that particular time frame. We failed to form National Reconstruction Authority on time. As we failed to establish NRA, then we also lost the ground. But it was a kind of failure of all political parties.
Gagan Thapa is a rising star in Nepal's ruling coalition. And still, he says that by forcing relief money to be channeled through the National Reconstruction Authority, his own government has helped push Nepal to the brink of survival.
Even the donor failed us, government failed us. Despite that, we are surviving. We are living with the hope. And the only reason is that the community itself, the resilience.
Kamal Bhattarai is a reporter for the Kathmandu Post. We met in the aftermath of the quake last year. Today, Kamal has offered to show me around again and tell me more about all the things that have happened in the year since we met.
Welcome back in Nepal. Thank you very much. How are you? You look well. There's a lot of Indian help that came in for rescue. That is why and then a blockade.
When I ask Kamal about the Constitution, he tells me that while most cheered its creation, many did not.
संविधान निर्माण गरिसकेपछि चाहिँ अलिकति देयर वाज द हाई एक्सपेक्टेशन्स दैट द कन्स्टिट्युसन वुड लीड टु द पोलिटिकल स्टेबिलिटी बट दैट रियली डिडन्ट ह्यापन जारी भइसकेपछि चाहिँ नि हाफ अफ द पपुलेसन फ्रम द साउदर्न बेल्ट डिडन्ट टेक द ओनरशिप अफ द कन्स्टिट्युसन which invited the political instability in the region.
Those who felt left out by the Constitution took to protest, and neighboring India took sides, setting up a blockade that put a stranglehold on Nepal's petrol supply.
Just after the earthquake, it was followed by almost 3 months of blockade. The fuel crisis. Economists are now saying that it is almost, the impact is almost 3 times an earthquake itself. So this was a kind of very unfortunate year for all of us.
The 7.8 magnitude earthquake that struck on April 25th was called a once-in-a-century tragedy.
Fuck! Fuck! Fuck!
But a little more than 2 weeks later, it happened again. This time reaching 7.2, technically an aftershock, but physically almost as destructive as the first earthquake.
It was just 17 or 18 days after first earthquake. My two daughters, they have the same birthday. And we were just about to cut the cake. And then the shock. Parents with just toddlers and kids, and just holding them, crying, panicking. Even after this first big earthquake, second earthquake, and all this damage, this devastation, I mean, we are failing to learn lesson from it.
The second quake hit Nepal's remote communities especially hard. Kamal grew up around here. He moved to Kathmandu for his work as a journalist. Now he's taking me to visit his village and his family home.
हामी चाहिँ काभ्रे पलाञ्चोक जिल्लाको श्यामपाटी सिमोल चौर गाविस वडा नम्बर 8 जुन मेरो स्थायी घर हो त्यहाँ गइरहेको छु।
The tin shacks that we see on the roadside on the way. These are the conditions that many quake survivors are still living in today. Makeshift shanties with no clean water or proper sanitation, and signs that no one expects to be leaving for a rebuilt home anytime soon. Nepal's roads themselves are so mangled as to prevent aid from reaching many areas. But when we do reach Kamal's village, it's clear that many of the houses left standing are still too dangerous to enter, including his own family home. His mother and father now sleep in a tin shanty out back, beside the cowshed.
माथिल्लो तल्ला चाहिँ पुरै भित्रबाट भत्किएको छ।
भत्किसकेको छ। छैन भित्र एकदम ढुङ्गा माटाहरू व्यापक खसिसकेको थियो। यो बाहिरबाट भन्दा यो भित्रपट्टिबाट एकदम खतरा छ यो।
Kamal's father, Kamal Bhattarai, built this house himself. He's lived in the village his whole life, and he says that this was the hardest year in living memory.
होइन भूकम्पले गाउँमा त बढी गाह्रो हुने नै भयो किन हुने भयो भने सबै घरहरू जस्तो कच्ची हुन्छ ढुङ्गा माटाको गाह्रो वहाँ अब सहरमा भनेको अलिक बढी पक्की घरहरू हुन्छ त्यसमा केही सुरक्षा नै हुन्छ अब त्यसो भयो हुनाले गाउँ नै अलिक खतरै मानिन्छ।
With his family home destroyed, his parents reduced to sleeping in a shed, and his government stumbling at every turn.
Temporary shelter.
Right. I thought Kamal would want any future foreign donors to work around Nepal's government, rather than working with them. But I was wrong. That's not what Kamal wants, at all.
अर्बनाइजेसनको प्लान ल्याउनु पर्यो सबै प्लान ल्याउनु पर्यो अनि त्यो चाहिँ एकदमै लङ टर्म प्लान भित्र बसेर डोनर एजेन्सीहरूले चाहिँ सरकारको करप्सन एकाउन्टेबिलिटी को कुरा पनि उठाउँदै सरकारी निकाय मार्फत आफ्नो काम अगाडि बढाउनु पर्छ।
Kamal says that Nepalis struggled for 60 years to pass a democratic constitution. So what he really wants now is for this new Nepal to be given the chance to succeed.
बेटर नेपाल बनाउने चाहिँ सबैभन्दा ठुलो अपर्च्युनिटी छ तर अब टाइम छ। यदि हाम्रो पोलिटिसियनहरूले यो मुभमेन्टलाई सिज गरे भने इट इज एन हिस्टोरिक opportunity for rebuilding the Nepal.
Just recently, the National Reconstruction Authority finally opened its doors and began to put remaining foreign aid donations to work. Back in Kathmandu, Krishna says that life is starting to return to normal.
Obviously, reconstruction process is too slow here in our country. And the government response is not adequate. But now the things are going normal. It's going back to normalcy, I must say.
It is going back to normal. That's good news.
Obviously.
And a new building code was just written, with modern guidelines for constructing more earthquake-resilient buildings. Krishna was able to use the code to retrofit the remaining 3 floors of his home. Inside Krishna's house, it's looking far better than it did a year ago.
I have to believe now because the things are moving in positive direction now as the Reconstruction Authority has been set up, and now all the political parties seem to have focused on reconstruction works, I'm cautiously optimistic that things will go in the right direction.
It's not just Krishna that's rebuilding. Krishna Dharel and her neighbors are hard at work reconstructing their maternal health clinic in the mountains. But meanwhile, Shanta's seen patients every day, and she hasn't lost a single one.
बर्खामा पानी कस्तो नि त्यो बेला मात्रै मैले सेवा गर्न सक्यौँ र अहिलेसम्ममा यहाँ अब भनौँ न भूकम्प गएपछि यो कम्पाउन्डभित्र मैले अहिलेसम्म डेथ भएको छैन मान्छे है सुने तपाईँको बच्चाले सास फेरेको तपाईँको बच्चाको मुटुको धुकधुकी.
The thing that has struck me most, after a year spent meeting so many people affected by the quake, is how most Nepalis really do believe that a better future lies ahead for them.
The only reason is that the younger people, they give me hope.
I'm hopeful that even if another earthquake strikes in our country, there would not be so many casualties as we had last year. So we are hopeful.
पहिलोभन्दा राम्रै बन्ला जस्तो लाग्छ. अब नयाँ ढङ्ग यो भूकम्प जाने बित्तिकै नयाँ नेपाल बनाउने चाहिँ मौका मिल्यो भनेर अब सरकारले सहयोग गर्यो भने अब पहिलाको भन्दा नयाँ नै हुन्छ हुन चाहिँ.
I've heard this sentiment so often in the last year that it's changed how I see hopeful moments like these. When people would tell me that they believed a new and better Nepal could grow amidst the rubble.
होइन बिहान 8 बजे पाएको हो 8:30 बजे हैन त्यसै बेथा चाहिँ त्यस्तै 4 घण्टा जति लाग्यो लागि 4 घण्टा जति लाग्यो गाह्रो पनि भयो हैन तर यो बच्चा पाउने जति मलाई यस्तो अनुभव भयो कि एकदम गर्व भयो कि आफ्नो नारी भएको प्रति एकदम गर्व भयो जुन नारी भएको सार्थकता रूपमा लिए.
After the year that Nepal has survived, I can see more than just hope. I see courage.